Hello everybody, welcome along to this video. Mr. Johnson teaches Macbeth Act 1 Scene 7, one of my series of videos exploring each and every scene from the play and helping you revise those key scenes that you're going to need for your exam. So as a reminder then, this is English literature and this is paper 1, section A, one of the first questions you answer in English, in fact, this one. So really important to know it. New picture on the screen there for you if you've been watching any of my other videos in the series, and I'll refer to that one a little bit later. Captures the scene quite nicely. So let's move on then. A summary of the scene then. Macbeth starts this scene by deciding that he's not going to murder Duncan because he's shown him such kindness since arriving in his castle. When he tells Lady Macbeth this, Lady Macbeth is very upset and questions his masculinity. She convinces him basically that they can make it look like the king's guards will have killed him and therefore get away with it. Macbeth agrees with this plan, and then that is the end of Act 1, which is setting up the events of the rest of the play. Key characters, well, there's only two of them in this scene. It's another one for Macbeth and Lady Macbeth together. And let's move on then. Here it is, Act 1, Scene 7. Room in Macbeth's castle, this one is. They've been sort of getting the meal ready. There's a big banquet going on, celebrating the sort of victory in battle. And then Macbeth is left alone and he has this soliloquy. So remember, a soliloquy is when the actor is the only one on stage that we can hear, and it's his thoughts. He's speaking to the audience. And he starts off by saying, if it were done, which is the murder, if it were done, when 'tis done, then it were well, it were done quickly. If the assassination, and I want to stop there, he uses lots of euphemisms here to talk about the murder, because he doesn't want to call it a murder and a killing, because that would make it too real to him. So he uses these euphemisms. At the top there, assassination, further down in yellow, the deed, but also when he refers to it as well, he just calls it, which sort of just removes the word murder from it. And he goes all and talks about like the judgments and the difficulties. Further down now on line 9, which is where I've got my middle arrow, he says, we have judgment here, but that we teach bloody instructions, which being taught, return to plague the inventor. As in, by teaching bloody things and doing bloody things, eventually those violent actions will come back to the person who did them originally. So if they're going to kill Duncan, there will be consequences for them later on, quite possibly violent consequences against them, and he knows that. Further down there, he says on line 12, he's here in double trust, so there's an idea linking to the theme of the play. Strong against the deed, as he says there, but then this key bit, he goes, then as his host, because Duncan is staying in Macbeth's castle, so Macbeth is the host, as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Macbeth knows he should not be a killer, let alone a killer of somebody who's staying in his own castle. He goes on, besides this, Duncan hath borne his faculties meek, he's been really nice, and then he goes on to talk about like angels, trumpet-tongued, damnation. He basically is describing Duncan as so pure and good that killing him is an assault almost on heaven. And that actually does link to the context here, the belief that a king was chosen by God himself. So Macbeth choosing to murder the king in many ways is committing an act against God as well. Further down there, this is the last few lines from line 25 onwards. It goes, I have no spur, which is what you'd wear on your boots to prick the side of a horse to make it move quicker. Macbeth says he has no spur to prick the sides of my intent, only vaulting ambition. To vault is to jump over, which overleaps itself and falls down the other. Essentially, he recognises his own ambitions, which could also lead him to falling, facing consequences, because they're overleaping. Maybe his ambition is going too far, is what he says there. Good lines, those ones. And then enter Lady Macbeth. He says to her, what news? He's almost supped, being Duncan. Why did you leave the chamber? Basically, the meal is going on, the big banquet is going on during this scene. Macbeth decides there on line 31, but look at the euphemism again, the business, not the murder. We will proceed no further in this business, because, Duncan, he hath authored me of late. I have bought golden opinions from all sorts of people. People now are being full of praise for me. Why would I throw them away, as he says, in their newest gloss, when they're so fresh? Why throw it all away now? And then Lady Macbeth says, was the hope drunk when you dressed yourself? Has it slept since, and wakes now to look so green and pale? Essentially, is yesterday's hope that you had now drunk? Is it now green and pale? And basically, I'll treat our love the same then, if that's the case. So she already starts trying to manipulate him because he's trying to back out of the murder. She goes on to say there in the middle of that bit, art thou afeard, like afraid to do the brave things that you desire? But then she goes on to say about how live like a coward in thine own esteem. And then she goes on to say, letting I dare not, wait upon I would. And then she refers to the poor cat in the adage. The cat loves fish, but does not want to wet her paws. That's the adage. It's like an old saying. So I say that again. Think about this, how Macbeth is like this. The cat that loves the fish, the thing it wants, like Macbeth wants to become king, but does not want to wet her paws. But he doesn't want to do the things and get his paws wet, or bloody in this case, which would help him get there. He says to her, prithee, peace, like pray, please, peace, be quiet. I dare do all that becomes a man. Who dares do more is none. There are none that are greater than me. What beast was it then, she says, that made you break this enterprise to me? And here's a quotable line in pink. When you durst do it, then you were a man. Proper manipulation there from Lady Macbeth, questioning his masculinity, saying he could be so much more. It's in pink, so I think that's one that's worth writing down somewhere and keeping safe as a good quote for your exams. In the middle, she then goes on to manipulate him further. She goes on, where are we? Line 54 there. I have given suck and know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me. So I think there's a possible reference there to them once having a child, to give suck, to basically to breastfeed. I have breastfed and know how tender it is to love the babe that milks me, to show love to the child. But then she goes on to say this, which is properly twisted, really twisted, and it's in pink there, so it's well worth quoting. I would, while it was smiling in my face, the baby, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out. Had I sworn to you, I've done this. It's a really violent image I've put there, reflecting the length that she's willing to go to. She would kill a child if she had sworn to do that to her husband. Nothing would stop her if she had sworn to do something like kill a child. He's sworn to do something to her, so let him do it. And he says, if we should fail, we fail, but screw your courage to the sticking place. Be brave. Force yourself to be brave. There's an imperative there from her, like commanding him to do something. Then she goes on in the middle bit there with the arrow, my second arrow, basically describing that when Duncan's asleep, he's vulnerable. What is there stopping us doing anything to him when he's in his swinish sleep, as she says on line 67 there? What can we not do to the unguarded Duncan, it says on line 70, talking about the fact that they're going to drug the guards outside his chamber to make it look like they have been the ones who shall bear the guilt, as she says on line 71. Macbeth then is now convinced by his wife. He likes the sound of this plan, and towards the bottom there he talks about how they're going to use the guards' daggers as the weapons and wipe the blood on the guards' faces from Duncan. Using their very own daggers, almost like framing them with their own weapons, which they didn't use. So again, they're actually sort of going to they're going to ruin other people's lives here as well. Not just killing the king, but actually make it look like somebody who's innocent is guilty. And then it goes on. They are happy with this. Macbeth at the very end, he uses a more rhyme again, echoing the witches once more. Away and mock the time with fairest show. So let's make a mockery of this. Let's sort of take the mickey by looking fair on the outside. And then he goes on to say, false face must hide what the false heart does know. It's another reference to appearances hiding the intentions of the person behind it. And the theme of betrayal could certainly be seen there as well. Key themes that run through this then, well, betrayal, as I've just said, but also the idea of good and evil, Duncan being the good, now the Macbeth's being the evil, the deception, the duplicity, like looking like one thing, hiding, as it was said at the end there, what is being felt inside and what they're planning, but also gender roles here. Look at how Lady Macbeth emasculated her husband, like removed his masculinity is the word, emasculated him. Sort of talking about who dares, if you durst do it, then you were a man, she said. Some quick revision questions. You can pause this screen and have a look at those yourself. But basically those questions will help you recap this scene. Worth writing those answers down somewhere as part of your revision. A bigger question for you to consider. How does Shakespeare explore the power and desire in this scene as well? Because there's two things. The power, who has the power, and also desire. How desire for something makes you willing to do desperate and, in this case, very dark things. I've put there, how would a Jacobean audience react to the two characters, and how has Macbeth changed? Think and reflect now at the end of this Act 1, from the soldier in Act 1 Scene 2 described by the captain as brave and worthy to what he is now. Look at what's changed and what has caused that change to happen. And finally, let's think about manipulation here then. A really nice illustration, like a puppet on a string who's being led by somebody else. Who is manipulating Macbeth is a key question for you to consider. Is it his wife, so simply, or is it the witches as well, who he's allowing himself to be manipulated by these people? He's so focused on what he wants that he's not reflecting on what is happening to him through these deeds. And that's the end of this video. I want to keep it brief. So that is Act 1 Scene 7, a really, really important scene setting up the events of Act 2 and the murder of King Duncan. Remember to watch some of my other key videos. If you don't watch them all in order, then at least make sure you're choosing the ones that you feel least confident with and recapping the key scenes. The longer the video, generally the more important the scene, I think it's fair to say, but do watch all of them really. When you find the time, it's good revision. And that's it. It's good luck from me when it comes to your exams, and I hope you found this video useful. Goodbye.